Disclaimer, this video is educational and informative in nature. Do not contact anyone shown in this video. Also, this video is discussing steroids. Do not use steroids. This is entirely for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Steroids and sex workers. It doesn't get much more clear than that. Look, I've been pretty clear on both of these topics in almost all of my videos, but this one is going to be the king to all of those videos. Meet Rose Fit, a girl living it up in Miami as an OF creator and an NPC bodybuilder in the wellness category. She frequents raves, imagine that, goes to the gym a lot, and basically posts on social media as much as possible. Now, there's nothing wrong with this at all. If you want to do sex work, that's completely up to you. Of course, I might make fun of you for it though. But what is also interesting about Rose is she does seem to be taking a little bit of the sizzle, the secret sauce, the bathroom stall special. And no, it's not the one you're thinking about. We're talking about steroids. How do I know this? Well, if you're competing in the NPC as a female, if you look like this, if you have the voice of a 15-year-old going through puberty, you have a pretty clear indication that somebody's abusing a little bit of the stuff. But there's also a video of her talking about what she's taking, and I think that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. But I genuinely commend this kind of video because it's really rare, especially from the other side of the table. The women in bodybuilding or just fitness in general rarely talk about performance-enhancing compound usage, and I think it's really cool when we get something like this. I think it's important actually. And Rose, if you hate me after this video, I'm sorry. Maybe you might love me after this video. I'm also sorry if that's the case, but either way, I commend you and I appreciate you. Now, what I want to do in this video, to be very clear, is a deep dive into her PED usage and talk about the things that she is taking, what they are, and how they'll affect the female or male body, and what they'll do to generally the physiology over a long period of time. And for those of you who don't know what performance-enhancing drugs are, let me enlighten you. Performance-enhancing drugs are steroids, are peptides, are other ancillary compounds that aren't necessarily fit into those categories, but do enhance performance in some way. People will take these for, of course, sports and improving performance, or to improve their visual aesthetic, and that's mainly what's happening in bodybuilding. It gives a competitive edge in almost every situation possible, whether that is cognitive, whether that is, training in some kind of sports specific way, looking good, or maybe just OF content creation now too, which is crazy. All right, you're gonna notice something. She is really close to competing, like less than a week away, and so she's going to be in the most depleted possible state during this time. People tend to look sick and almost lifeless at this point in time. It is a very common thing expected when you're in the sport of bodybuilding. This isn't inherently drug use, but it could be seen as a part of drug use to some people. However, what you do notice almost immediately is her voice.
And today I have a very highly requested video, or I guess topic for you. We're gonna do a few things today. I've just sent my check-ins to my coach, so I am going to just run through my poses for you today. I woke up 148.9 pounds today, which is about a pound lighter than I've been averaging the past few days, so that's great, obviously.
So she shows us posing for her wellness category, and she's obviously has, a very top tier physique. But I think what most people would say about this, which I've seen in the comment section a lot, is holy crap, Batman, like this physique requires performance enhancing drugs. Yes, my friend, it does. And in fact, much smaller, less impressive physiques than this require swaths of performance enhancing drugs. You would be so shocked if you knew what happens behind the scenes in bodybuilding and in fitness in general. Part of why I make all the videos that I do. Give me a subscribe if you haven't already. Only about like 40% of you sometimes subscribe, even less in some videos. So hit that subscribe button. But I will be very clear. There is far less impressive gals than this girl who are blasting steroids, male hormones to achieve a look. This is a very, very common occurrence within bodybuilding.
But I did take an extra dose of trazodone, which is like a sleeping pill that I've been taking during prep. I've been avoiding trying to up that dose because it's obviously not something that you want to be doing, depending on the sleeping pills to be able to sleep. But I'm just at a point now where I'm exhausted, and I'm honestly, if I need to do it for a week, so be it. Yeah, I took a single full pill. I usually only take a half pill, but I took a full pill last night.
So she talks about trazodone, which is actually another really typical thing for higher level competitors competitors or athletes in general, not just bodybuilding here, right? But like any competitive sport, nerves on edge, stress, cortisol, like these things can inhibit sleep pretty potently. Mainly in bodybuilding, you can't sleep because of the inherent drug use, right? You're using a lot of things that hijack the adrenaline system or redline you into a fight or flight state, or what's called the sympathetic nervous state. And that can keep you from sleeping effectively and efficiently almost every single night. Not only that, but you're usually starving yourself, literally depriving yourself of essential nutrients. There are 150 essential nutrients, by the way, and you have to generally consume all of them. That's why the word essential is in front of them. And when a female is eating 1,200, 1,400 calories even, it is near impossible to hit those recommended daily values of each of those nutrients. So what does your body do? Well, think back to like caveman. It's going to say, hey, we need to get this substance to survive. Don't go to sleep yet. This is chronically what happens. And then also add that being deprived of carbohydrates. Insulin suppresses the CNS, the central nervous system, therefore allowing you to transition into sleep much easier. You just have a recipe for disaster. You're constantly on edge, crabby, moody, hangry, you name it. To combat this, trazodone is often used out of many medications for sleep. It's actually classified as a very interesting drug, a serotonin antagonist reuptake inhibitor. Now, this thing is potent as right? It basically, the type of serotonin subclass receptor that it blocks is the one that is associated with cortical excitation. Think of like anxiety, the suppression of deep sleep, pushing you to those higher levels of sleep so you can wake up easily. Blocking this definitely reduces arousal and enhances the rates of slow wave sleep. It also mildly inhibits the reuptake of serotonin, creating a systemic level of serotonin that's much higher in the brain, again, conducive to sort of these rest and digest states. And then it's, blocking a bit of histamine, another layer of sedation with this compound. Very effective. In clinical data, it actually improves architecture of sleep, whereas other sedatives don't do that, right? They push you to be unconscious, but that doesn't mean you're inherently sleeping better. It just means you're not in a state of consciousness. Whereas trazodone seems to allow you to fall asleep, improving sleep latency and improving the quality of sleep that you have. So if you were to choose any drug, which there shouldn't be a dependency on any drug to sleep, that's a problem in and of itself. Be very clear about that here. While this might sound good, it's not good long term. You could say this was a good choice.
So let's go all the way back to June. I believe it would have been June. So 16 weeks out, going into the prep, I wasn't taking anything besides GH and TB500 and BP157 peptides. And all of that was for the primary reason of healing my shoulder. For those of you that don't know, I tore my rotator cuff in February-ish. So yeah, I knew that in order to get through this prep and give myself the best shot at not really seriously hurting myself and actually making it through to stage, that I was going to be taking these peptides and taking growth hormone the entire prep. And I did. I can't remember off the top of my head the amount of the peptides, but I will put it here on the screen. And that has stayed completely consistent throughout my whole prep.
Hey, you love to see this. We talk about it all the time on the channel. So if a gal does get enhanced, her best options are usually something like this: growth hormone, TB500 or thymosin beta 5, whatever, and body protective compound, or BPC 157. I think I just said that already. Whatever. Why? Well, in short, they're a lot safer than androgen usage. They're not going to lead to female virilization like androgens would. The lengthier explanation: when a woman enhances herself using steroids or male hormones, you run into the issues of virilization or the development of secondary male characteristics. This includes things like deepening of one's voice, facial hair development, hair loss on top of your scalp, clitoral enlargement, something we've talked about extensively, unfortunately, on this channel. And these things aren't reversible. They're permanent. Once those androgenic changes, those genomic shifts happen, they're there with you for life. Even small doses of Anavar, Winstrol, Primable, and things we'll talk about here today can start to push virilization to a point which is highly notable and cannot be reversed. It's extremely dangerous. When you have compounds like BPC, TB, and growth hormone, these aren't androgens. They don't act on the androgen receptor at all, and they're exclusive to different areas of the body. Instead, like growth hormone, which works through the IGF-1 pathway, it increases protein synthesis, collagen production, and cellular recovery. It's more about tissue repair and overall body composition rather than raw raw muscle gain, but think tighter skin, improved recovery, better results in the gym, a refined physique, and a safer outcome. And then BPC and TB500 are very similar. They're working through healing pathways to help connective tissue repair, soft tissues repair much faster, increasing collagen synthesis, decreasing localized inflammation around potential injuries. These are massively improving rates of recovery, which, if you think about it, that's the objective when you're trying to enhance your physique. If you can get back to the gym faster at a higher volume, lifting more total load, the scale of which you progress is going to get much more linear.
Anyways, peptides throughout the entire prep. GH at 16 weeks out was at 1 IU per day, which is a pretty low amount.
But what I will say here is she says that she's using 1 IU of growth hormone a day, which I think is kind of worthless. The standardized dose of growth hormone in a clinical setting is about 0.2 to 0.6 milligrams a day. Now, this is in bodybuilder language because clinical settings don't use bodybuilder language, but let's break this down a little bit. So a standardized growth hormone vial comes in 3.33 milligrams, or what a bodybuilder would call 10 IUs. Therefore, if you were to divide that into tenths, 1 IU equals 0.33 milligrams of total growth hormone. Ergo, or whatever people say when they are trying to sound cool and connect this to something else. You know what I mean? I don't know what I mean. The 1 IU means she's taking 0.33 milligrams. The younger you are when you replace growth hormone, which I believe she's 26, you should be higher. So the 0.6 milligrams is more likely. You're basically at a suboptimal replacement dose of growth hormone when you don't really need to be. And does the replacement of that growth hormone cause a PED? Does it elicit a performance enhancing effect? With the clinical research that we have, typically no, you don't see that. So if it was me, this is the one case where I'd say, like, certainly up that motherfucking dose.
At 16 weeks out is when I started Primobolan, and this was my first time ever doing injectable Primo. Obviously, you inject GH, and that's just like, you're just injecting that into the skin, but this is the first time I've ever done any sort of intramuscular injection, and honestly for no other reason besides the fact that I'm an absolute pussy when it comes to needles. In the previous preps and like any time that I was cycling on steroids, I was only taking orals, which is less effective and it's also not good for your liver, and it's just not good to be doing that time and time again. And I also knew, you know, going into this show, it's a really big show, and most, if not all of the girls I'm competing against are going to be doing injectable Primo, and it does put me at a disadvantage to not do it. So I decided to be a big girl and just handle it, and it's still not my favorite thing. I still fucking dread it every time I have to do it, but I've gotten better at it. But yeah, so 16 weeks out, started the Primobolan injectable, and that was 30 milligrams 3 times a week. And that was it. That's all I was taking at 16 weeks out to 12 weeks out. So the Primo and then one IU of GH.
She says she's afraid of injecting, which is sad. But she also mentions that she's a big girl and just needs to do it.
Do it, lady.
Do what?
All of it.
Which is concerning because that is the exact type of mentality that gets people into these situations. I was talking to a CrossFit athlete the other day, and it's something very similar where she tore a rotator cuff and she's like, it wore it as a badge of honor. Like, it was fucking sick because as a CrossFit athlete, that's like, you want that for some reason. Like, it's idolized, but it's like, no, that's just part of your niche. That's actually not good because like 10 years from now, you're going to be in chronic pain and hate yourself for it. The same thing could be said here. It's like this embracing of a lifestyle that is clearly and chronically unhealthy, but the community around people like this support it so much. It's some form of delusion. And this is a total androgen dosage of 90 milligrams a week, far exceeding what the normalized dose is for the female to male conversion in terms of hormonal therapy, which that conversion for transgender therapies starts around 40 to 60 milligrams of total testosterone. Clearly, this dose is going to lead to some not so great effects. Obviously, you are going to build muscle, but it's not going to be clean cut. But what she says is like,
That's it. That's all I'm taking.
And that was it. That's all I was taking at 16 weeks out to 12 weeks out.
as if that's like a low amount. You know what I mean? Like crazy shit.
Moving on to 12 weeks out. At 12 weeks out, we upped the Primo to 40 milligrams 3 times a week. You know, same frequency, just added a little bit more to the dosage, I guess. And then we also added in Glen, T3, and T4. So these are all not steroids. These more or less affect like your estrogen and your hormones and are like fat burning and metabolizing compounds. Clen 25 micrograms, T4 100 micrograms, and T3 25 micrograms. I think these are all, that is a very low amount of Clen. I'll get into it later, but we definitely go up from there. But I think for T3 and T4, that's a pretty standard and like low amount. I honestly don't know, but I think. And at that point, we also upped the GH to 2 IU per day. That's the full picture for 12 weeks out. I will put it on the screen here.
So she keeps the growth hormone extremely low and increases the androgens. More insane work. We just got done talking about how growth hormone might be the safer alternative if a female is to use a performance-enhancing drug because it is non-virilizing. But here we see her keeping the dose low and increasing the androgens. The Primo has now gone up to 120 milligrams a week, double the standardized dose for that female to male conversion therapy. She also added T3, T4, clenbuterol, and one more measly IU of growth hormone. Now, T3, T4, these are thyroid replacement hormones. There's nothing special about them, really. Bodybuilders use them to hijack your metabolic rate, to speed it up, therefore not having to restrict as much food, not having to do as much cardio to lose as much fat. But also clenbuterol is sort of a central nervous system hijacker where it thermogenically increases the body's rate of calorie consumption, making your body temperature higher, your heart rate beat faster, and generally that sympathetic nervous system I was talking about go into high overdrive. And so you're constantly in a fight or flight state, but that means your body's often wasting energy. But when you are combining Clen, T3, T4, these compounds together, they're very cardioactive and can cause a lot of related issues to cardiac tissues. May that be, the death of certain tissue within that cardiac function area, right? The myocardium, or you have issues with the actual electric signaling to the heart, which can be very problematic, heart attack, stroke basically, or potentially, heart enlargement, cardiac hypertrophy. It's all very common things in bodybuilding. It's not extreme what she's using at all by any means, to be very clear, but it is a risk factor that people should be aware of.
After 2 weeks, so now we are at 10 weeks out, we added in 10 milligrams of Anavar, just oral Anavar. I think that's really the only way that you can take Anavar. But yeah, added in 10 milligrams of Anavar per day. The Clen was up to 40 micrograms per day, and everything else stayed the same.
Bombastic side eye.
I'm blown away by the amount of androgens that this gal is using. Literally insane. We are at 190 milligrams of total androgens, far exceeding what most males are prescribed for TRT. Anavar is an oral that's often seen as safe, but that isn't the case. It is a better option occasionally, but not safe. With Primo, Anavar, testosterone, any kind of steroid, they're all working on the androgen receptor non-selectively, meaning that no matter what you do, are going to target the development of male-like features, hair growth, vocal fold thickening, skin changes, and yeah, muscle building, but so much more with that. Just because one compound may truly be more mild, quote unquote, it doesn't stop it from having some horrific effects, especially on a female's body. It is a male hormone activating male gene transcriptions. Again, to make this as clear as it possibly can, it can be quoted and labeled as safe by the community, but it is still going to undoubtedly cause masculinization of females.
Now we are getting to halfway through prep point, which is 8 weeks out. The Primo, the VAR, the T4, and the T3 and the GH all stayed the same from the previous numbers. The Clen at this point was 40 micrograms per day, and we added in Novadex, just 10 milligrams each day. So that was 8 weeks out.
Round 3, brothers, she added Novadex. Novadex is basically, it's a generic name for tamoxifen citrate, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, a SERM. These act basically on different tissues in the body, blocking the estrogen receptor from that type of expression, expression. Why was I going to say espresso? Now, a lot of bodybuilders, especially females, think that it's going to cause their lower body to lean out quite significantly. This may be true, may not be true. Generally, there's not really any good cited data to support this. There's no mechanism to support this. It's sort of one of those archaic things in bodybuilding, which people just sort of go along with. However, what it does do is decrease IGF-1. When you're taking low doses of growth hormone, that's kind of like, oh damn, what are we doing here? And then on top of that, it is going to absolutely increase the clotting risk factors that people develop. Not so good when you're taking multiple other drugs that do relate back to that clotting risk factor. And if you just think about this logically too, blocking estrogen and its action and then increasing androgens and their action doesn't sound so smart. Sexual dimorphism is created by these two things, like fetal development. I mean, my friends, when you give a fetus a surge of testosterone, it then is becoming sexually dimorphically a male. When you give a surge of estrogen, it becomes a female, okay? And so when you now do that into adulthood, what the hell is going to happen? I don't need to be a rocket scientist for you to understand that.
At this point, I was trying to push a bit more clean, like at the 6 weeks out mark. Honestly, I was getting really, really severe cramps in my side. I couldn't really bend over. If I like got down on my knees on the floor to like clean something, I would like severely cramp. It felt like something very, very internal in like my abdominal muscles. I honestly don't know what exactly it was, but the clen was definitely making it worse. And in all honesty, also making it worse was the fact that I was still like going out on the weekends and raving, and even if I wasn't drinking, I was still on my feet, getting dehydrated, not having salt intake, and like it was like really fucking me.
Oh Jesus, why do people rave and take clen? I never understand. But she's being modest here. She's probably taken some K, all right? She's deep in the K. Not this one. She's literally in the worst environment possible. She's taking things that are increasing clotting factors. She is dehydrated, further increasing clotting risk. She's taking clenbuterol, a very cardioactive compound, at raves, likely doing very cardioactive drugs. This is a recipe for disaster. If you remember back a while ago, we talked about John Skywalker and his heart failure, right? He's approaching a form of immediate death at some point in the future because of this. His lifestyle was exactly this. It is exactly what caused the issues that he now has to face. And unfortunately for him, I mean, he's actually a very good guy, but unfortunately for him, and my condolences, he will live a short life. The clock is sort of ticking, and not like a decade or something, shorter than that. You can't do this, right? The steroids, the performance-enhancing compounds, they aren't free lunch. They aren't free lunch. They're always going to take something from you in exchange for giving you something, right? It's the law of alchemy, equivalent exchange, right? We're trying to figure this shit out. It's pretty simple. You don't want to do this. It's bad news bears.
So at this point, at 6 days out, my exact cycle is looking like 40 milligrams of Primo 3 times a week, 20 milligrams of Anavar a day, 60 micrograms of Clen a day, 100 micrograms of T4 a day, 25 micrograms of T3 a day, and 20 milligrams of Nova a day.
Oh Lord, and this isn't even the end of her prep yet. They're just not even done. We are now at a total of 260 milligrams of total androgens weekly, doubling what is a standardized dose for male testosterone replacement therapy. Do I need say more? So look, how does this affect a woman over the years of use? How does this change a female's physiology? I think Rose is a good example for this, as she's the one who's gone through it. So when a woman uses anabolic steroids, those compounds bind to what is called an androgen receptor, and these are throughout the entire body. Those receptors exist in tissues that normally only see tiny little bitty amounts of testosterone, like the larynx or hair follicles or your skin. And when those receptors are overstimulated by tons of steroids, the tissue literally remodels itself under the influence of male level or even super physiological male levels of androgens in their signaling. So one thing you tend to see is basically the cartilage, the development of vocal folds in the larynx grow. These things grow, deepening the voice due to androgen receptor activation. Just the same mechanism that happens to adolescent boys, the reason their voice cracks and all that stuff. It is exactly a one-for-one exchange. They also get a slight edema, water retention, which further lowers the voice. And even after stopping usage, those structural changes are solidified. Okay, your physiology, your actual tissue has changed, and it won't atrophy, unfortunately, unless you get surgery. Then you have like hair follicle thinning, and this is something that, you know, not to be rude, but like on Rose, it does kind of look like she's got some thinning or hairline recession. Hair follicles on the scalp are extremely sensitive to dihydrotestosterone, a potent metabolite of testosterone. But also what scientists did to make things like Primobolan and Anavar is take dihydrotestosterone and then add a couple carbons to it and change it. And that's how we got Primobolan and Anavar and various other compounds. You're basically taking DHT. You're taking the thing that's going to cause excited hair loss. Now, when androgens bind to the androgen receptor on susceptible hair follicles, it basically shortens the life cycle or the anagen phase of hair follicles. Over time, because of that shortening, the hair follicle follicle shrinks and, grows like a layer of collagen around it and basically calcifies. This shrinked hair follicle with a bit of disruption on it, it can't produce the same hair follicle. They're thinner, frailer, they are shorter, and they begin to just stop growing entirely. But then you have like this sort of aged, coarser looking skin. I mean, this is a young gal, you guys. Like, this is a girl in her 20s, not in her 30s. Androgen levels increase sebaceous activity. They increase what is the oil production on your skin, which thereby increases the amount of bacteria on your skin, and then the disruption, the homeostasis of your skin, causing clogged pores, acne, texture. Chronic elevation of androgens also decreases certain collagen synthesis, right? This is what we talked about in another video. Oftentimes people are like, well, I'm taking this, so my collagen synthesis should be increased. Yes, but there's many types of collagen, and we're not talking about the one that's in your skin. It also decreases elastin, which is a very crucial peptide in your body, which, as it sounds, increases the elasticity of one's skin. Combine that with a shifting amount of cortisol and a shifting amount of androgens, you have fat repositioning on the body, which then removes the fat from your face and basically puts it in other places, or just changes fat patterning permanently. All of these effects create this noticeable loss of youthfulness in one's skin, whether they're lean or not. And this is not just like the level of usage that she is partaking in. This is at all levels of usage. I don't think there's a safe, quantifiable dose where stuff like this doesn't begin to happen. And it's really important for a gal to understand, because she might see the physique and be like, that's what I want. I'll be all right with a little bit of a deeper voice, but there's so much more that compiles on top of that. I don't know. What do you guys think? To me, it's diabolical. It's diabolical amounts of dosing. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's not great. I don't know. If you want to check out your health today, what you can do is go down below in the description, click Anabolic Insights. It's a beautiful website with a great user interface that allows you to purchase your own lab work in a very easy to do way that gives you basically the power of what a doctor does. It lets you say, hey, here's how I'm doing. But what's best about this website is it live streams your results. So you get real-time feedback on the lab work as they come in, instead of waiting a week to get everything back and then you finally get your panel back. What it also does is it has this advanced AI, which is pretty neat. I'm pretty, against AI stuff, but there is occasionally a couple good versions of it that I'm like, I could see the use in that. And this is one, because it'll analyze your blood work for you and triangulate certain markers and then give you feedback based on that triangulation. Things that I'm talking super realistically here, physicians don't understand. It is one of the most advanced websites I have ever seen. You can click the link below, and you can even use code Coach Kolton for a discount. You don't have to, right? It's just a discount for you though. It's an option, and I really do suggest it because I know a lot of my demographic is using performance enhancing drugs and needs to be a little bit safer. I hope you have a beautiful day. I'll see you in the next video.